Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back. Or I don't know if you should be saying that to me because it has been a while. And so I am just very happy to be back. Very happy that you could join me this night or maybe at another time that you're watching this. And so tonight we're going to be doing things a little bit differently, or at least I am, um, just because I am not 100% yet. I was not able to set up my studio with all the cameras and lights and tables and monitors and et cetera, et cetera. So I am doing it completely different this time. So we're going to pray for no hiccups tonight. And so, but again, I'm glad that you're here. If you read the Facebook description, I'm basically going to be talking about my testimony tonight um, regarding the car accident that I have, which is why I've been out for so long, and what that means for this ministry, as well as taking any questions that you might have. So I'm really looking forward to this opportunity and to see what tonight has to offer, to see what questions y'all might have. So I hope my chat is working right. I think it is. Okay, so with that being said, let's go forward. So regarding my testimony, so for those of you that don't know, I was in an accident on September the 28th. And that basically puts a big dent in your social life and even your ministry life. But before the accident, I was actually very close to Yah, very close to God. I was in prayer. I was worshiping. I could feel his presence. I was reading 1 Samuel, about King David and Saul, and just really enjoying that time as he was showing me a lot of personal things that applied to my life um, in those scriptures, and I was just loving it. And around that time, there was a minister who I don't know personally. I'm aware of her ministry, use her resources, Restoration in Christ Ministries, Diane Hawkins, and she is a little bit older, and she ended up in the hospital. And she sent out this newsletter and basically said, "Hey, I believe that God told me that sometimes in order to get more authority, to get more revelation, you have to suffer. And that's by his hand and not ours. I mean, we're all suffering to a degree. I mean, sure, but sometimes more than others." And at that time, I told Yah, God, that I was his and that he could do with me as he wanted. So I believe, in a sense, that I was like Job. And I'm not saying that I was as righteous as Job, but in a sense, that God allowed the enemy to attack me because obviously it happened. And so I'm not mad at God. Um, I'm actually very thankful in many ways, actually. Um, but I knew that if I handled it correctly, what some people call productive pain, that it could be used to propel me, as every opportunity that we get does. As it says in Job, we are tested every minute. And so, all right, let's get me out of the way and let's move to this slide. Hopefully, I did some testing with this last September, early September, and it was a little bit blurry, but hopefully it won't be tonight. So on Thursday, September the 28th, again, it was the day before Sukkot started, actually. I was at a stoplight and going to make a left turn, and this lady was coming from the left, 87-year-old. She had a medical episode. The witnesses around her said she was swerving. And in my mind, I thought I was totally innocent and I did nothing wrong. But when I went to go back to look at the uh, intersection at the wreck, um, I had to have pulled out some in order for her to hit me. And basically, I got T-boned. Uh, the medical personnel had to basically bring out the jaws of life and cut me out of the car. And I was losing a lot of blood at that point in time. Actually, the first 3 surgeries that I had were just to stop the internal bleeding, you know, even before they tried to fix any problems. And so the seatbelt, which, yes, saved my life, but it also causes some damage as well, as my liver was lacerated, my small intestine was cut, I had fractured ribs, ended up basically with my pelvis being fractured and requiring 6 screws. And so I'm very blessed that I didn't actually walk away without brain damage or brain drain damage, however you want to say that. And after that, for the first 36 hours, they were actually the most crucial when I was in the hospital. And the doctors weren't sure I was going to make it. And it was very hour by hour. And actually, the first 25 days in the ICU were very similar to that way also as well. But you can see there that my car took a beating, and I along with it. The actual passenger went to the hospital. He was out the same day. And so I took the brunt of the hit. And so I was at Kennestone Hospital, and I was in ICU for 25 days before being moved to what they call step-down ICU. During this time in the ICU, I was intubated, meaning they basically had me on life support, which I would have died if I didn't have it. So in a sense, technically, I was, dead if it weren't for the machines. And so they had the tube down my throat. I had a tracheotomy. They were giving me fentanyl, and please keep in mind, this was the hospital grade fentanyl. This wasn't the, psst, hey buddy, like on the street corner in downtown Atlanta, guy wearing a, long length leather jacket and stuff like that. Now, this was the approved good hospital grade A stuff. And so, and if you don't, just in case you ever are in a situation like that, you might want to teach your family how to play charades, because there was a point in time where I was coming out of it that I couldn't talk, I couldn't communicate, and trying to communicate with my family was frustrating and humorous, but I'll move on from that. So during this time, I was continually having doctors, nurses, and other medical staff tell me that I'm just lucky, I'm blessed to be alive. And, after I didn't have anything to compare that to, I'm just okay, I don't know. And so, but after hearing it like around 20, 25 times, you start to believe it. And so I do believe that I am a walking miracle. What God has saved me for, I don't know. But looking back, actually, I counted around 5 times that the enemy has tried to take me out. That's a different story. That's a different testimony. And even since then, my physical recovery has been very astonishing, amazing, very miraculous to some. To many that have watched the speed of my healing. Not that I'm all the way healed yet. And so, but I'm very thankful. I know that I'm very blessed. And so again, I give Yeshua, Jesus, all the praise for that. And even when I was in the hospital, you'd probably be proud of me for this, that when they were giving me the blood to, replace the blood that I had lost, I was told that I was actually praying over the blood before I received it. Because if you don't know, if you haven't watched some of the Walk with God videos on YouTube or Rumble or whatever that I teach on, you can pick up other people's soul fragments that way, soul ties and stuff like that. The one of the terms that you can look up for fun, if you just want to do this, is epigenetic memory transference, which are basically will tell you of many stories about if you receive someone else's organs or blood or whatever, you will start behaving like they do. And that is a spiritual phenomena. And so, again, I talk a lot about that in the Walk with Yah videos. And so, anyways, I was in the hospital for that time there. You can see that picture of me. I was out of it. I had all kinds of tubes, machines, and blinking lights, and all kinds of stuff going on. Now, it was funny because even before I had the accidents, God, he told me, he was like, no, you need to fix some things in your bedroom and your bathroom. And I'm like, okay, like, did I hear that right? And so I did. I fixed some things up. And in my mind, I thought it was for another reason. But basically, he knew I was going to go through this accident even before I had it. And I would need those repairs to help my recovery. And so I'm very glad that I was blessed that he blessed me that way for being obedient, even though I didn't know what the heck he was talking about. I was like, okay, you say so. And so I'm in the ICU and, you're in a bed and you can't move much. You're having a hard time communicating. And even though I was able to speak over my tracheotomy, which actually kind of amazed some of the medical staff there, which I think happens in a small percentage of cases, but many people there didn't know that. They were like, you're talking over your tracheotomy. And I'm like, okay, well, no one told me I couldn't. And so I'm just talking. And so, which was kind of funny, actually. And so, but when you're in the hospital, the little things become big things. And so when someone puts something that's out of your reach and they walk out of the room and it's just inches away from you, it's like so close yet so far, like I can't get to it until you come back. And so one of the things that God was teaching me during this time was to be less critical and watch the words of my mouth. Because really, I didn't know what the hospital staff was going through personally or in their jobs of the other people they had to deal with. And so I had to be very careful. Um, I had to consider them also as well. This wasn't all about me, because it's very easy to become very critical and self-focused for some. Like when you press the little nurses button there, the thing that they put in the bed for you to get, for them to call out to you, and nobody responds for 1-2 hours or at all, it's very easy to criticize. Now of course that depends on the severity of the situation. Sometimes I just need a little something, and sometimes I wouldn't get an answer at all. And I would kind of joke with the staff there. I'm like, I'm not sure if my call went to India and then it comes back or where it went, but I heard, I got no response. Thankfully I'm a pretty happy, jovial person, and I just like joking with other people. But I was in the hospital again, and at this one point in time, Pastor Donnie from Liberation Freedom Ministry um, came to visit, and he was praying over me. And when he was praying over me, I was reminded of Jacob wrestling with God. Jacob basically was doing things his own way. Um, he was a conniver, a manipulator, and I don't think I'm those things. I hope not. But but I was probably leaning more on myself, even doing ministry, than I needed to be. And so at that time, Jacob got a new name as he learned to rely on Yah more. So during this time, I felt God really impressing upon me to do the same. And so, again, because I had to think, have I been fighting him all this time, even while doing ministry, even when I know better? And so I'm going to have to say yes. And so I'm trying to do better. So another message that I got, because there were so many people praying for me, that I was actually surprised. I was actually kind of overwhelmed. And I've been to a lot of different churches and ministered with a lot of different groups and stuff like that. And it was just very heartwarming to see that they had passed the messages on, also family members also as well. And I felt I needed to learn more about love, which I still am. That's one of those lifelong lessons, because I understand the obedience part of love. What it has to say in the book of John, 1 John, if you love me, you'll follow my commandments. Me and my Father will come to live with you. Quite a number of verses that talk about that. Again, obedience. Not that I'm perfectly obedient, not that I'm sinless. I'm not saying that, but I kind of get that aspect of it being somewhat, being Torah observant. But I started questioning my need to learn more about the other aspects of love. And so, again, that's an ongoing life lesson as well. And so, if you would have asked me, I would have said by November the 22nd, that Tuesday, I would have been ready to go home. I thought the insurance was going to run out, and rehab was, things were going good as they had moved me to Emory. Actually, I'm telling that a little bit out of order. And so let me jump back a little bit. So on November the 6th, after 40 days, I don't know if there's some type of biblical message there, but I got moved out of Kennestone and moved over to Emory Acute Rehab for rehabilitation. And so if you know anything about acute rehab, what that means is wrong one. What that means is they are going to work you. And so when I first went in there, I was barely moving. My feet, legs were not moving. I could move my left toe, my toes, and that was about it. And they were like, yeah, we'll have you go into the bathroom in no time. And I'm like, what are you smoking? But I will hand it to them. They did have me moving a lot quicker, a lot faster than I thought I would be. And so, yes, you do need to be moving after you get out of a serious surgeries. And so, again, after 40 days, I get transferred to Emory. On November the 19th, let me go back here. I'm at Emory Rehab. So Saturday around midnight, Sunday early morning, all of a sudden my temperature shoots up to around 100 degrees. I could see that I was slightly getting confused. My hand, um, right hand was trembling. I was having a hard time texting. And my tiny room was filled with all kinds of nurses and medical staff as they're trying to figure out what's going on. They're taking COVID tests and, all kinds of stuff. And so, come to find out, I had got sepsis, which was another time the enemy was trying to take me out. Because if you don't know, sepsis, if not dealt with fairly quickly, can kill you. But thankfully, I was in the hospital already. And so, after that point in time, I was sent back to the secondary ICU, the step down ICU again. And I didn't know this, but initially, I didn't learn this till much later, that at this point in time, my family was starting to make initial funeral arrangements. Um, and I don't blame them. And so can't say I would do it any differently. And so it was getting bad. And so, but I finally started getting better. And I started, then because of the opiates, I started going through some very painful episodes caused by the opiates. And at one point in time, I recall Yahweh, or the Holy Spirit, whichever, told me that I needed to transcend. And so, in other words, I needed to focus on the things above. And I was trying to. I'm not sure if I did it perfectly. I'm pretty sure I didn't. And to kind of, escape the pain, but in a good way, not to necessarily uh, create another soul fragment or to, turn into a DID situation. But, and it was funny because I had another friend of mine who hears pretty clearly from God. And she had around the same time a similar uh, battle. And she heard, "Rise. You don't want to miss your miracle." And so I was trying my focus to, again, focus on the things above, those things that are pure, those things that are lovely, and, etc. And so, just to let you know, all during this time while I'm in the hospital, as it says in the Bible, the kingdom is within us. And so, for those that believe, we carry the kingdom with us wherever we go. And so, he tells us many times, go heal the sick, right? Well, one time in the Bible, heal the sick, raise the dead, cast out demons, heal the lepers, that type of stuff. So even while I was in the hospital, and you'd be proud of me, I was still praying over people that needed healing of some type. I was still walking in miracles. I was still prophesying. I was still praying for healing, and people, were receiving healing. And I was even doing deliverance from my hospital bed, even though I couldn't move too much. And I was kind of like wondering, I was like, I'm not sure this is such a great idea because I can't move. And some of the medical staff there were starting to manifest. And, but they kind of shut it down because they weren't aware of it, or because they were in the hospital, or the demons kind of freaked them out and told them they needed to go or stop. And for whatever reason, it got stopped. But even in that condition, I was still walking in miracles. And so on again, by November the 22nd, my family thought, No, it's not where I wanted to go, actually. Um, by November the 23rd, sorry, it was Thanksgiving, and I was in my 8th week. Now, the number 8, for those of you that are familiar, represents new beginnings. And so, all during this time of Thanksgiving and even before then, I was thinking Yeshua, Jesus, because we have to do that in the good times as well as the bad. Because I knew that I had much to be thankful for, even though I didn't necessarily feel it physically. And actually, you have a lot to be thankful for, whether you think about it or, whether you feel blessed or not, you still have a lot to be thankful for, regardless of your circumstances. Now, in that 8th week, November 27th was actually my kind of turnaround was manifesting. And so at that point in time, I moved from the Emory General Hospital back into the Emory Acute Rehab for the second time. And so I did my second tour, if you will, and I hadn't lost a lot of strength, which was good. I was still able to do the walker and stuff like that. So I could just really pick back up and get more rehab than I might have just the first time alone if I hadn't got sick. And so there's Pastor Debbie on December the 8th came into along with Pastor Donnie, but they came to pray over me. And at the time they were saying prayers, and Pastor Debbie got this vision of 3 kings coming to me with gifts. And I wasn't sure what that meant. But then later on, there were 3 couples that visited me on a particular Saturday. And again, the Bible says we're kings and priests, that type of stuff. And so they all kind of gave a similar message. And when I thought about it, I was like, oh, well, these are the 3 gifts I think that Pastor Debbie was prophesying about. And what they were telling me about, these were married couples, and they were talking about the need to hear from God. And they were also talking about how sometimes one of the spouse will hear one message and the other one will get it confirmed, and that's how they operate. And some of them were just starting to do that, but that was to me just amazingly beautiful, because I'm like, this is how it should be. And so it really kind of drove this point home again, that I need to lean more upon him. And so let's turn you on. Okay. So you can see there me, my room, kind of living like a teenager, because I really can't move beyond what I can reach with my arms. And you get all these different nurses and different medical staff, and they just put things, wherever the closest place is. They don't have time, and that's fine. But yeah, I was living like a teenager, so my room was a mess. And so on December the 14th, after around 39 days, I was leaving Emory Acute Rehab and finally going home on the 7th day of Hanukkah. I think that's actually the next slide. Yeah, there we go. And so there you can see me, and I had lost like around 30 pounds. There's my little chicken legs, and I wasn't even sure how my legs were holding me up. But I had to learn how to, what my new normal was for that period. And I'm still kind of learning what my new normal is. Um, but anyways, if it wasn't for my family and for many others praying for me, I would not have done as well, especially my loving older brother and my younger brother, nephew. They all helped me greatly, and I don't know if I can ever thank them. So I was very blessed that I have a rather functional family. And so, but on December the 29th, I had a gentleman visit, and I'd known him from a few years prior to, lives up in Minnesota, I believe. And, I'd stayed at his house along with another friend of mine, minister friend of mine, and got to know him, and really solid guy. He's not too weird, if you will. Very good foundation, good family, good kids, amazing kids. And this guy came to stop by, and he actually did spiritual surgery on me, which I know kind of sounds a little weird, but if you, well, I'll describe to you what he did. And so he was like, and he's been doing this for a little bit. And so he would basically close his eyes and look in the spirit, and God would show him, hey, like the ball where your femur kind of, pivots with your um, pelvis, like it's not completely round, like it needs to be fixed. And so God would give him a tool, and in the spirit he would kind of like shave it off and all this type of stuff. And God would give him some pink grease, Yahweh would, and he would put it on there, and he's like, yep, he's had me use this pink grease before. And Yah would show him, like my femur was bent in one direction, because of the trauma and stuff like that. And so, and I was going through, a good bit of pain when I was in the ICU with nerves and stuff like that. Anyways, so he was like, Yahweh wants me to bend the femur in the other direction to kind of straighten it out. And I'm fine with this. I don't have a problem. Again, I trust the guy. And he's taking his hand and putting it on my head. He's taking his hand and put it on my foot. And he's like, I can see the energy flow, and it looks like lightning, like different colored lightning bolts. But he's like, when it gets to around your pelvis, he's like, it's kind of doing this weird loopy loop thing, and started praying over that. And, he said a whole bunch of other stuff. And I know that sounds really weird to some people, but if you think about it, when the Apostle Thomas, after Yeshua Jesus had died and was resurrected, the other apostles were, telling him about this and about Jesus, and he was not believing. He's like, unless I put my finger in his hand, unless I can take my finger and put it in the holes where the nails were, and take my finger and put it in his rib, he's like, I'm not going to believe. And then, of course, Jesus shows up, and he's like, why don't you take your finger, put it where the holes are, and take your hand? And so we have a spiritual body. We got to keep in mind that even the temple that was built, that was shown to Moses in the Exodus, that it was just a representation of the heavenly. And so we have a spiritual body. Now, is it just bones, and we have a spiritual heart and a spiritual liver and all that type of stuff? Sure, but there's also much more to our inner world than just that. There's all kinds of stuff. I talk about that in some other Walk with the YouTube teaching videos. I won't get into that. I'll just say briefly, we have animals and lakes and trees and buildings and all kinds of stuff in our inner world. And so, but the point of the story being, it was after that night, Because for those of you that pray over people for healing, you're kind of like, well, let's test this out. Let's see if anything worked. And so I'm like, okay, well, let me test this out. And at that point, I was able to actually put the walker in front of me, and I, like a foot in front of me, just kind of keeping one hand on it, and I didn't need it as much. And I'm like, hey, it wasn't a complete 100% immediate healing, but I'll take it, And so after that point, I didn't need the walker as much. And then on January 7th, I go to the church that I go to, and I'm there, and the worship is playing, and I got my eyes closed, and all of a sudden I feel a brush of wind across my cheek, and I'm like, okay. So I opened up my eyes, and I looked to see if anyone walked past. There was no one there, and it wasn't the vents of any type of air conditioning, anything like that, because it would have kept on blowing. And so I'm like, okay, that was weird. And I sat there for a minute, and it happened again. And at this point in time, I knew what it was. Do you know what it was? You probably do. But it was the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. And so he was telling me that he was there. And so at some point in time, the pastor and his wife, they pick up on, hey, we need to pray for healing. And they pray for healing, for people that were there. And there were some healings. I didn't go up. I was still had my walker there, kind of half using it. But I was like, well, let's just test it out. So I kind of start marching in position. And I could tell that my left leg was a little bit more mobile. And so it was after that point that I started moving to a cane. So again, wasn't 100%, wasn't all the way, didn't get me to the goal line, but I'll take what I can get. So I'm getting all these blessings and, very thankful for them. But of course, challenges are always going to come. We're on this roller coaster ride called life. And so this is what happens. So my brother, bless his heart, was going to drain the water heater. So it turns on the hot water. And this is what came out. And in my mind, I'm thinking like Willy Wonka. I'm like, man, that's like a river of chocolate. Like I want to take a strawberry and dip it in there. And I'm just thinking, man, that is going to be the most awesome thing, chocolate covered strawberries from the bathtub. No, that's not what it was. And so it was gross. And so that was a $2,500 hit. And so thankfully it's taken care of now. And so, yes, it was true. Actually, it was true as much as I didn't want to be. But we got it fixed because you can't do much without hot water. And then after that, my brother was crazy enough to allow me to drive his car. And I kind of knew I was ready, but he was prompting me as well. He was like, hey, I think you can drive, and I'm like, okay, sure, why not? One of the blessings that I did have was on that September the 28th day, I don't remember anything of that day, which in a sense is kind of a blessing because I don't have any trauma associated with that, with driving or anything like that. Some people ask me, Noe, like, did you get any revelation while you were out during that time? All I can say is not that I know of, but if I did, I pray that he brings it back to my memory, as we go along. Maybe he did. I don't know. But I had to start praying in a vehicle. Like I want to become more independent, not depend on my brother to take me everywhere, physical therapy appointments and all that type of stuff. So I prayed on it and I felt Yahweh give me an amount. So started looking for SUVs. Found one that I liked for the price I wanted, except when we started to pay for it, it went to the next category of, I'm like, of money, to where it was beyond more than I wanted to pay for. And I'm like, oh man, like, I don't know if I should get this vehicle. And then we found some stuff that, with the car, and they lowered the price and it dropped it back down to where I wasn't freaking out as much. And so, um, I'm very happy about that, to report that. So I'm going to start bringing this to an end. Probably went on longer than I thought. So I had a dream on January the 22nd, where I was driving a forklift in a warehouse. And on the loading dock, it was full of boxes. And I had a forklift that had a pallet that had like 10 feet high worth of stuff. And some of the stuff fell off, and I was barely trying to maneuver my way through the dock. And when I got off the forklift, I looked down the aisles of one of the in the warehouse, and I saw a box of toys there. And I noticed that the warehouse that all the shelves were empty. And I believe that we're coming into a time where God's going to start giving us those things that we need for this time, for those that are able, willing, and ready to receive them. And so I'll just say, and I pray that that's a part of where this ministry is going. I'll get to that in a moment. But in 2022, I had a dream where I knew the interpretation meant I was coming to a time of serious transition. What I didn't know was how long it was going to take or by what means. I'm talking serious transition. I mean, we all go through transition. I get it. But there has been a lot that happened this past year. And at this point in time, I'm just trying to rest in his peace and presence mostly. Because I knew that I needed to learn more about following his leading more to flow, as well as about love and what does that really look like. So I believe this accidents and this downtime has really been a blessing for me, as I've mostly shut down the Walk with Yah ministry for now. And I'm slowly starting to discern what he wants me to do with this ministry. So I'll just end with this. Even in your worst days, don't forget to ascend and dream for the better things that God has planned for you, because he's working at those things for you if you let him. As Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have concerning you, declares Yahweh, plans of peace, not of evil, to give you a future and expectancy." I will let you read those others on I'll go ahead and read them. "Then you shall call at me and shall come and pray to me, and I shall listen to you. And you shall seek me and shall find me when you search for me with all of your heart." So for this ministry, it will always have a component of deliverance. I don't know if it'll always be to the same proportion or degrees or percentages, because walking with him, which is kind of the Jewish way interpretation of what is known as halakha, how to walk his commands out, how to live with him. And so living with him is just more than deliverance. That kind of gets rid of the oppression, but you still got to learn about character. You still got to learn about walking in the gifts. You still got to learn about a whole bunch of other stuff. And so I am just seeing how he wants to do this. And I had someone call me from ministry the other day, and I was like, well, I got to pray into this. And I felt Yah go like, nope, you can't take him. And so I'm really trying to let him lead during this time, as I'm trying to become more sensitive to him. and trust in myself that I'm hearing from him. And so I'm just excited to see what he has. So I'm going to ask, I don't know if there's anyone here, but just let you know, I don't know if you're here unless you chat or say something. I will open it up for Q&A if anyone has any questions. Again, I know everyone's not in the habit of me having these live streams, and Facebook is the only way that I can put out an advance notice, really. And so I'm just looking forward to what he has, because I believe that he is going to do much more with Walk with Yah. I just don't know what that is. And I'm just learning how to be comfortable with that. I think a lot of times in walking with him, we have to learn how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, with not knowing. I find it hard to set the 5-year plan, to set the 1-year plan. Sure, I mean, it's kind of good to have, but you got to be flexible enough to let him adjust it. And so we shall see. I have many questions. I'm not going to worry about it. I pose them to him, and I hope that you are as well. So I'm going to let it go with that. But if you have any questions, comments, please feel free to email me or post them on Facebook or wherever. And next time on February the 15th, I will be talking on the topic of love. And so I think it's a topic that people are usually on one side or the other, either the obedient side or the mushy, gushy feeling side. And so actually it's quite a balance. But I want to talk some more about that. But I will let you go for now. I bless you. I wish you shalom. I pray for you shalom. And I just look forward to seeing you next time. May you be blessed.